Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you this evening. I want to start with a little disclaimer because I know that there are rumors that often precede me to the podium that I am an orator of some kind and speak well. And actually, I've discovered over the last little while that this sort of a reputation is a liability because it distracts people from the truth, particularly folks in the media who aren't all that interested in the truth anyway. And so I want to ask you to do me a favor this evening. I hope you'll excuse me because I've decided that, because people say it's passion and all of this. If you want to know the truth about the speeches that I give, it has nothing to do with passion or anything else. Though occasionally it is kind of hard for me to keep what is in my heart from showing. I mean, I'll confess that. But at the same time, my views aren't informed by passion. They're actually informed by a simple and I think inescapable logic. It is the logic of our liberty. And what I would like you to do this evening is put aside all expectations, and I just want to spend a few minutes in a little conversation focusing on this logic. And then I want to challenge you. If you can find a way out of the logic that I present to you, then you go vote for somebody else. But if you can't, you better start asking yourself exactly what you're doing right now. Because the logic of our situation, which we seem to want to hide from, and we hear good speeches this evening, people going through the laundry list of things we Republicans believe, it's not very hard to figure that out. We're a party of liberty. We want to hand it back to the people of this country. And in every area, schools and money and decision-making and business, we would like to see in America that's the way it's supposed to be, with the people in charge, not the government. It's fairly simple. But what's the great obstacle to that? It's not the talent of the American people. We see that proven all the time. It's not the track record of the American people. No, what is it? It's the fact that you've got folks like Bill Clinton and others can stand up, and when we say people ought to have more control of their money, he acts like they're not good enough for it. And we say they ought to have more control of their schools. He acts like they're not good enough for that. We say they ought to keep and bear arms and have the right to defend themselves in this country that the Constitution guarantees. And they tell us people aren't wise enough, aren't disciplined enough, aren't responsible enough for that. When is it going to become clear to us that the real challenge to our agenda isn't in the facts or the empirical evidence? It's a moral challenge based on the premise that we're just not a people good enough to be free anymore. We can't be trusted with our liberty. And therefore, we need more power in the hands of government to make sure we take care of each other, do all that. See, I think, however, that approach defies the clear logic that this nation was based on. It started out with a simple premise. Our rights come from the Creator God. And it's hard sometimes for people to listen to that. I didn't make that up, y'all. And it doesn't just come out of Alan Keyes' Christian heart or this one's Bible. It comes from the Declaration of Independence, the core key document of American life. No, wait. Don't have much time. I want to get through this. Now, I want you to think about this hard, though. See, don't applaud it if you don't really care about it. And I've got to tell you, I think some people in this room haven't thought about it enough. You don't care what it really means. Because if our rights come from God, if that is the authority on the basis of which we lay claim to liberty, then you tell me what becomes of that claim if we adopt policies and approaches based on the assumption that God's authority doesn't matter and that he does not exist. We then do not have a claim to rights. We do not have a claim to liberty. And our whole way of life, which rests on that clear foundation, collapses of its own weight. And that means that those of you sit in this audience and think, oh, well, there's that pro-abortion guy, a pro-life guy there. He's going to tell us how we should be against abortion, and that's his personal view. No, it's not. If that declaration is true, then the policy we now follow on abortion cannot be right. It must be wrong. If we receive our rights from God, then they cannot be a matter of human choice. Not the mother's choice, not the father's choice, not the judge's choice, no human choice at all. That's simple and clear. I can't escape it. See, this is my problem. There are folks in the media try to pretend I'm rigid and stuff. I'm not rigid at all. It's just that if you think something through with integrity and you reach a conclusion, you can't change that conclusion until somebody comes up with an argument that has greater integrity. There is no argument to refute what I just said. We are either for the great principles of the Declaration or we're not. And if we're for them, then the position we now take as a society because of Roe versus Wade on abortion cannot stand. It must be reversed. But that's not all. See? Because if we've turned our back on our fundamental principle, that principle also guarantees that we can have some confidence in our own use of freedom. Because after all, if we get freedom from God's authority, we have some assurance that we may very well use it in a way that respects God's authority. That implies discipline and responsibility. It implies a sense that as a people we stand on a common ground that protects us from licentiousness and disorder. Once we've gone down this road that so many people seem to think we can go down with indifference, if that authority is no longer there, we no longer acknowledge it, what becomes of the basis for our confidence in the self-discipline of our people? It disappears. And that means we've got to be afraid of each other. We've got to be afraid that if there's not a strong hand of law, we won't take care of each other. So the government had better force our money from our pockets or people will starve in the street. We have got to be worried that if we don't have clear guarantees, we won't be treated fairly in the workplace or anywhere else. Because we can't trust to hearts that no longer have reverence for that authority from which their rights derive. This is the problem we're faced with. It's not an economic problem. It's not a problem to be solved by prosperity. Somebody's going to remember one of these days that tyrannies can be prosperous. The Romans were under the boot heel of one of the worst despotisms in the history of mankind, and they had several centuries, in fact, in which they were reasonably prosperous before they collapsed. We're not just about prosperity and money and material things. We're supposed to be about freedom. But if we're about freedom, how can we go about rejecting the fundamental principle of freedom, throwing away the authority from which our liberty derives, and think we're going to survive as a free people? See, this is my problem. I think this through. I look at it. It seems fairly clear and simple to me, and I see no way to escape it. We're either going to face this or we're going to lose our liberty. And this little time we're going through now, prosperity, patting ourselves on the back as superpower, don't think this lasts. Great trials are coming, great tests and great challenges, some of which are being built up right now by the treachery of this administration in giving our secrets and technology to what will be the most determined enemy we can have in the next century. I shudder to think we've been through good times and bad. We've faced down wars. We've gone through great depressions. But we did it all on the basis of a heritage that acknowledged the living God and his role in this nation's life and as the foundation of authority and conscience and liberty. If we throw that away, as we have been doing, what shall be our treasure? What shall be our moral resource when we face the challenges and difficulties of the future? We got through all those things in the past because our founders weren't afraid to acknowledge God in the Declaration, and Washington wasn't afraid to acknowledge him from every public platform. And others, when we faced the difficulties of war and the challenges of economic life, would stand and lead this nation in prayer, as was done on the day we launched our forces into battle on D-Day. And yet now we are made to feel ashamed of that heritage of faith, which is not just this or that sectarian faith. It is the American faith. It is the American creed. And without it, we cannot sustain the heart and soul needed to keep this nation strong and free. We've got to get back to this, and it's not an easy road. It's a road that will require that we acknowledge that if our rights come from God, they must be extended to our posterity. We do not have the right to kill them in the womb. It's an understanding that will acknowledge that we cannot be indifferent to the moral challenges that are killing us. Just like this, I'm being criticized now because I said we got to restore the ban on homosexuals in the military. Got all these people who are trying to offer us choices we don't have while denying that we have the moral capacity to make the right choices we need to make. This isn't going to work, my friends. And if we follow leaders who are indifferent and careless with this heritage, I don't care what label they wear. Republican or Democrat. They're not going to do this country much good. So you have to make up your minds. This is not a game. We approach it in all the spirit of fun and games, but you look back on this century, you'll see the price that can be paid when people forget the basic lessons I just presented to you. The deaths mount up by the millions, and the horrors are multiplied. And in the next century, for all you can be as optimistic as you want, we will be armed with science and technology that could produce far greater horrors than anything we have seen so far. With that greater ability and knowledge must come greater moral capacity and responsibility, or the earth will perish. This is not the time to forget our standards. It's the time to renew our commitment to that creed and faith which establishes those standards. I hear a lot of talk about how we need to overcome our divisions and racial grounds and all this. You want to unite America? Then have the guts to call America back to the common ground of moral principle which defines our common national identity, which transcends race and creed and every kind of division, and which makes us one nation under God in whom we trust. If as a party we have the boldness to stand forthrightly for that creed, then we will win, and we will deserve to win. If we do not, then cheer and applaud all you like. We will lose, and we will deserve to lose. But what is worst of all, if we do not find that courage now, then America is in danger, for all its success, of losing in this moment of our prosperity that which is so much more important than our prosperity, our understanding that our liberty and our faith are one, and that it is our responsibility to pass them both on to the future. If we can dedicate ourselves to that, then I think we will lead this nation not just into years of prosperity, but into years in which the true light of liberty we are supposed to represent will continue to inspire not only our generations, but future generations around the globe. This is the choice that you are making in this election year. And I hope that you will ponder whether or not it's time to stop thinking about how we win this or that partisan victory and start thinking about what I think is the only real path to victory. How do we guarantee that in the years ahead, the most effective and articulate possible case will be made for restoring this nation's allegiance to its true principles of God-given liberty? Answer that question honestly when you go into the voting booth. And I will trust in God and take my chances.